So alpha gives us the amount, and in terms of z, that is 1.645, if I remember correctly. And so the rejection region is from 1.645 to positive infinity. Third step, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So x bar was 130, s was 12.5, I believe. So the standardized sensitivity is 130,000 minus 125 divided by what? So 12.5 over square root of 32. What's this equal to? Is that in the rejection region?
Yes.
So we reject the null, and we conclude that the advertising agency's claim is false. The mean level of pricing is greater than 125,000. Another thing we should be able to do is find the p-value, which we already know is going to be less than what?
Point 0.05.
Very good. So we've got 2.26. So is that the p-value or half the p-value? Yes, very good. The full p-value. And if you look up 2.26, what do you find? Okay, 0.9881. So you have the 10th edition, and the p-value is equal to 1 minus that, so 0.0119. So if we had used an alpha of 1%, would we have been able to reject?
Yes, we're rejecting it. Alpha 0.5.
0.05. So if we'd used an alpha of 1%, would we have been able to reject? I'm asking. If I had just given you the p-value and an alpha of 1%, would you have been able to reject? No. Why? Because alpha in that case would be greater than, the p-value would be greater than alpha. You only reject the null when the p-value is less than alpha. Remember the rule of thumb that can help you remember. And think of the p-value as the probability the null is true. But you also have to remember in the second breath that that statement is completely false, right? The probability that the null hypothesis is true is 0. I've actually had this discussion with the editor of a journal. And of course, in that case, I lost because I had no power in the discussion. But I still think he's wrong. That's one of those situations where you really, there's no benefit in discussing. Kind of like the final. I'm kidding. Is that clear? Okay.
For other questions, can you just do step one?
Okay. Which question?
71.
The Department of Transportation reported Amtrak trains had a 78% on-time arrival record over the previous 12 months. Assume that an 1, a study found 330 to 400 Amtrak trains arrived on time. Does the sample indicate the Amtrak arrival rate has changed? Test an alpha 0.05. Okay, so the key word here is what? Well, there's a couple of them, but proportion, that's one of them. So we know that the null hypothesis is going to be about P, right? Now, the other word is changed. So are we dealing with a one-sided or two-sided test? Two-sided. So we're gonna have equals here. And what is the null hypothesis that the proportion is equal to? What it was in the past, right? You want to show that something's changed, you need to show that what it was in the past is no longer true. What it was in the past was 0.78. What's your null? And the other one?
72.
72. Okay. You hold your hand right there, I have trouble hearing. Quite all right. A radio station in Myrtle Beach announced that at least 90% of the hotels and motels would be full for Memorial Day weekend. The station advised listeners to make reservations in advance if they plan to be in the resort over the weekend. On Saturday night, a sample of 58 hotels and motels showed 49 with a no vacancy sign and 9 with vacancies. What is your reaction to this radio station's claim after seeing the sample evidence? So, the claim is that at least 90% of hotels and motels will be full. Now, if somebody's claiming that, that's a good question. They're saying at least. It depends. You can either state that they're not telling the truth, right? The problem is that you would have to set it up so that the null hypothesis would be
P greater than or equal to 0.9.
yeah. That's actually what I think we need to have it as, because we're gonna show that their claim is false. So we'll take their claim as the null and then demonstrate that it's not true. It's not necessarily how you would always set up a problem like that, but in this case, I think that's necessary. Let's see.
Can you go by the reasoning you had for that problem, like mean and?
Let's see. So, well. Yeah, actually. So, we're still dealing with a proportion, and now they're claiming that at least 90% of motels. If you're testing their claim, then you would set it up as P greater than or equal to 0.90. And then your alternative would be that P is less than 0.90. You could certainly turn it around and say, well, I just don't believe it. I think that, the proportion is 90% or less. The problem with that is you've got in your sample, you have a occupancy rate or no vacancy rate of 84 point some percent, so you stop. There would be no more problem. Other questions?
73.
Okay. Environmental health indicators include air quality, water quality, and food quality. 25 years ago, 47% of US food samples contained pesticide residues. In a recent study, 44 of 125 food samples contained residues. State hypothesis that can be used to show that the population proportion declined. Okay, so this one's easier, because we're asked to show that the population proportion declined, in which case the positive statement is that a proportion has fallen, right? And that's literally is smaller than what it was in the past, so we know we're gonna want that in the alternative or in the null. In the alternative, because that's what we can make a positive statement about. So in this case, the null hypothesis is that P is what?
Greater than or equal to. What's 47?
Exactly.
That's in the 8, 3.
Case problem 2.
The unemployment study, okay. Each month, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics publishes a variety of unemployment statistics, including the number of individuals who are unemployed and the mean length of time the individuals have been unemployed.
What question is this?
Case problem 2. For November of '98, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that the national mean length of time of unemployment was 14.6 weeks. The Mayor of Philadelphia requested a study on the status of unemployment in the Philadelphia area. A sample of 50 unemployed residents of Philadelphia included data on their age and the number of weeks without a job. A portion of the data collected in November of '98 followed. Conduct the hypothesis test to determine whether the mean duration of unemployment in Philadelphia is greater than the national mean duration of 14.6 weeks. Well, if you want to show that the mean duration is greater, then the null hypothesis is case problem 2. The null hypothesis has to be that mu is less than or equal to 14.6. I believe. Right, because you want to show that the mean is greater than 14.6. Right? And so the positive statement would be that, and that has to go in the alternative. At least that's the way I think of it.
Are you going to have questions at all on hypothesis tests and final?
Good try.
But ask it a different way a second time, you had good luck last time.
Well, see, I'm trying to remove the incentives for that. Let me just say about the final, the only concern I have is that it might be too short. Too short.
That's,
I wouldn't let that weigh on you too heavily.
Well, that's pretty much been the reaction of the other 3 classes, so I've pretty much been bound to say, no, I won't touch it. You might leave very early, but somehow we'll live with that.
is it true, false?
Well, mine. It's hard to argue with that.
It's accept and reject.
You could probably write true and false for your answers regardless.
Yeah.
True and false?
And or
All
although
or zero, or-
if you write the true and false, that might not be any more incorrect than writing true or false.
We could do 1 or 0.
That's better, much better. 1 or 0 is safe. Other questions?
The number of questions, is that going to be too, this,
Too few. It's too short, I could tell me.
are you going to test, the question is, are you going to test more towards the end of the chapters?
There will be an weighting of the material that you have not been tested on, the degree to which I'm not going to comment on. The reason is that any exam is always designed to put pressure on the material, right? You're supposed to have sort of a blanket pressure to study the material. And then, of course, all questions are designed to narrow that focus as much as possible, which is, of course, why it's important not to answer. But I will answer that there is an overweighting on the last part. The number of questions, the style of the question is a little different. It's not one interwoven scenario like it was last time. That didn't work out too well. There were some individuals who didn't realize that there was a resetting, so they just stopped working on it. And so this has, I think, 5 maybe different scenarios, more or less. And the questions are, and therefore, briefer.
Or maybe not.
The final is 2 weeks from tonight.
I believe that to be correct.
That's correct.
Same time, same place.
Yeah, which is nice. They used to have it 7 to 10 for some reason. I think that was the location that they insisted on, not giving us the room until 7 or something. Any questions on, let's see, so we've covered final projects, view, of course you've done your evals, so, yeah.
Are you going to test on, I mean, not test on, I'm asking, do we need to remember assumptions of noise tone? The model assumptions. Other than, simple linear ones are just 3 assumptions, but multiple ones, there are several of them.
Not really. There aren't any more.
Can you repeat that?
Sure.
Do you see what it is? Yeah, you see what it is? It's just questioning him. That's all.
Okay, so 1, this is your true model. You just have, the only difference between univariate is that you have now T different explanatory variables rather than just 1. Otherwise, linear, and noise term, which is normally distributed, mean of 0, fixed standard deviation, which is fixed variance. This just means independent. So each noise term is independent of every other, as long as it's not, not talking about itself. It's the same as really basically the same. Okay, let's do individual projects then. So if you have questions, you want to